We're going to have fun. It's the last session of the day, but we're going to still talk about very important topics. So, as I said, we're going to talk about what's hot and what's not. So let's start with what's hot. What do you think is the hottest thing in the industry and why? Who's going to be the lucky winner?
Okay, I'll jump in here. First of all, these lights are hot. Okay. Thank you for those who've stayed for this last session. Well, we're an exciting industry, and there's a lot of things that are hot and different lines of business. You know, today people are talking about RCS, migration of SMS to RCS. We're talking about AI. Everybody talks about AI, conversational messages, APIs is also a hot topic. Around the different aspects of lines of business. But what I think is really hot now is the eSIMs and travel eSIM. It's an area. My company in BTS just invested in a startup company to get us into that area of the business. All right, and so it's estimated to be about 25% of the roaming business by 2028. So it's going to be, and it's not really sabotaging the roaming per se, although people who are in the roaming operators we talk about a little bit concerned, but it's just growing. It's just growing. So there's more in the market. The market's going to grow. So my vote is for the eSIM.
Okay, so one vote for eSIM. Anyone agrees or disagrees?
Yes. Well, you want to go first? No, I think I agree. You know, that's one thing that we've been tracking for a while at Kaleido as well. And it's still early days. You know, it's hugely popular. It's being used widely by Apple iPhone users mainly. But what we're waiting on is when the biggest market, China and Hong Kong, you know, once they have standardized eSIMs for their smartphones, they are the biggest proportion of population in the world, traveler community, who uses travel SIMs. You know, they travel to different parts of the world. They select multiple countries in the continent, and they go there. You know, they have a travel agent who books their tickets, you know, books their accommodation, and gives their travel SIM with them. So now imagine all those travel SIM users, 40-60%, it's quite high at that part of the world. And imagine them migrating to travel eSIMs when it's ready, and then we're looking at a much higher, faster progression or migration from travel SIMs to travel eSIMs, and that's what will drive it over the next couple of years. It's still not standardized yet, but the MIIT, the regulator in China, is working on it. It's been tablet supported, but if you're a Chinese traveler who've procured a smartphone from abroad, they can still use it. And it's less than 10% of the global travelers who's using travel eSIM. So that is set to grow continuously over the next couple of years, few years.
Matthew?
Is it?
Yeah.
Leasing is a hot topic, but I'm going to take a slightly different approach. I would say connectivity, and I know connectivity is a really wide term, and what I mean is cross-border, seamless connectivity, over which you have the travel eSIM products, but you also have a variety of other key services. You know, when we look at it, the kind of end-to-end international roaming ecosystem sits at a platform underneath all of this and supports travel eSIM, supports M2M IoT, supports a variety of different sponsored roaming, MVNO, enterprise, other type of services. So it doesn't often get called out or mentioned because there are sexier things, as Eugene mentioned before, much sexier topics like AI, travel eSIM, etc. But without that solid and working platform, none of this is possible. And the reason why I think it's a really hot topic is because the international roaming business, the wholesale international roaming business, has a very, what I would define as an analog mentality and an analog way of working. And it needs to change, it needs to evolve and develop if it's going to support the growth of travel eSIM, the growth of M2M, IoT, and other key services that need kind of seamless cross-border connectivity. So I agree, travel eSIM is hot, it is a sexy topic, but I would say that the underlying seamless cross-border connectivity would have my vote.
Okay, Mike,
something to it quickly.
Oh my God, Nitin. Go.
I agree with...
No, but you don't. I don't like people that agree on my panels. You know that already. You disagree.
One thing to add on to it is, I think in our previous working group we discussed this. a few months ago, last year, we were doing this workshop for a big tier 1 European operator group. And one of the key things that they highlighted was how they see travel leasing disrupting their roaming business. And they had, high, medium, low, different scale against each sectors that they are working in. And for SMEs and for businesses, they said it's low risk. But then we pointed out to them that, people like Airalo, they're actively pursuing SMEs and businesses. And that's what we are seeing now. You take Olafly, you have Airalo, you have Saili, they all have travel eSIMs for businesses. And the biggest pain point for enterprises and business is budget management and expense management. So imagine you have a corporate company-wide account where they can control your expenses and manage the budget for travel allowances, for connectivity while traveling abroad. That's a game changer. And we're seeing more and more enterprises moving to that model. And it's a challenge for the operators in the sense that their biggest margin, their best customers, the VIP customers, are the businesses, and they need to look after them.
Okay, now we're not allowed to mention travel leasing anymore. What's the next hottest thing?
So I think for me, it's... Can you hear me okay?
No, I don't think it's working.
Might not be on. Switch on.
We're having... we should...
Testing.
Yeah,
I think it's on now, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think for me, there's a sort of coming together of the software world and the telecoms world. It's been happening for a number of years, but you've just got to look at the growth of things like Microsoft Teams and how that's really transformed communication and the impact that that's having, both positively and negatively, actually, on this ecosystem. And I think the other thing for me that's really hot is I'd call it local globalization. So we've touched on eSIM. I'm only going to mention it once. But what everybody wants is they want to fundamentally be local, pay local, act local, but do it globally. And that's historically quite challenging to achieve. But with all the developments such as that technology, it really is becoming, I think, more and more able to be done.
Okay, now, James, you haven't spoken yet. That must be a world record.
It is.
On the panel.
Fantastic. Well, if I would have got there just before Matthew, I would have said exactly what Matthew said. But the way I would phrase it is, for me, what is hot is what I'm seeing around the world. I have mobile operators as customers as well. It's the changing role of the mobile operator. Mobile operators essentially own the last mile to all of you in the audience, everyone watching at home. They own that last mile of connectivity for everything. People forget the world of digital advertising is worth hundreds of billions. Voice is worth several hundred billion a year. Next year it will be Voice's 150th birthday. We're talking about eSIM, we're talking about travel eSIM, we're talking about IoT and all this stuff, the wonderful world of business messaging, A2P SMS, some say it's worth 40 billion, some say it's 50 billion, 60 billion, 70 billion. What is the common denominator amongst all of these? It's mobile network operators. What I'm seeing at long last is a real move from a lot of mobile network operators to want to get more involved directly in the ecosystem many of you in the audience are active in. Many of you have been serving mobile operators, for example, acting as aggregators in the business messaging space. Now I'm seeing more mobile operators actively wanting a piece. And the way that will be delivered is with partnerships with people on the stage and in the room. So for me, what is super hot is the changing role of mobile operators who've been around forever and underpin every single thing we do.
I'm going to turn the question in a different way. What is hot that people think it's not hot? Is there anything that...
AI.
No, everyone says it's hot.
Oh, sorry, it's the other way around.
Yes.
SMS.
Yes, you think people think it's not hot?
It's not hot.
And retro, I like it.
Totally. And voice. So if we look within the mobile ecosystem forum community, there's so many working groups, there's so much discussion about RCS business messaging. We have a working group, a focus group, interest group, call it what you want, looking at WhatsApp now as well. But the reality is, for so many of the MEF members, of which, as we know from last night, we reached 250 last Friday night here at the MEF community, a very big chunk of them, I would say 60, 70%, are messaging companies. And contrary to all the marketing and the spin out there, the vast majority make the real big chunk of their revenue from SMS, which has been around since December the 3rd, 1992. It's getting a lot of bad press for being the vehicle of fraud, Do we see email being dragged through the mud for all of this? No, we don't. The reason why SMS is being brought up time and again in the media and by others for being the bearer and the vehicle for fraud is it has worked its way so efficiently and well into all our consciousnesses that we really don't make a big deal about the fact we received an an offer via SMS or a notification via SMS from an enterprise, because it's something that's been going on for literally decades, and it's something billions of us are so comfortable with. So for me, yes, I am a walking SMS. I've been called that many times. But like Mick Lane and Mobile Squared, if you've come to a couple of his sessions this week, you will see that were it not for the whole price side of things with SMS growth would be absolutely stellar. And instead of having 2.5 trillion A2P SMS transactions a year, would be very soon up to the 4.5 trillion level.
Mike?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting point. And, I think the other thing that's spun out of a lot of that messaging world is the CPaaS market, right? You look at pretty much all of those CPaaS providers who are, they play in the CCaaS world, they're in a variety of adjourning markets. The voice and messaging businesses at their heart, and the vast majority of the revenues are probably messaging primarily, I would say, when you look at the Gartner Magic Quadrant.
Okay. In the audience, anything that you think is hot that we haven't mentioned? Oh, there's someone at the back, I think.
Is that Florence?
Florent?
Oui. Yeah.
Florence, you could
The
come
light
and
through
join
my
us.
eyes, but I think I can see the hair. Yeah.
What about mobile ID?
Mobile ID? Do you agree or disagree with
Not the
Florence?
expert.
That it's hot or not hot?
It is actually.
Is it, she says it's hot.
It is hot.
It's needed.
Nick from Mobile Squad is working on a big mobile identity project, so it means that is hot.
Okay. What do you think? Oh, you've baffled them. Florence. That's the first.
I mean, for me, it comes back to that, what problem are you trying to solve? And it's all about fraud, right? So it's, is it hot? It has to be, because if it's solving a problem like fraud, then it's going to be a hot topic. I think the more probing one is why we found ourselves having to do it in the first place. Because
It's fraud pays.
It's
Anyone
almost
else?
taken for granted in a way,
Yeah.
Well, that's the sad thing. Sorry about interrupting, but Gene's 100% correct. You look at many, many surveys out there with mobile operators from many organisations. What is an acceptable level of fraud for you? And the sad fact is, so many mobile network operators come back with a stat saying, "Hey, 5% we can live with," which is wow. You think about the billions around the world. That's vast.
we're dealing with it pretty much every month on our network, and it appears and then disappears, and the same miscreants generally end up somewhere else, and they'll come to you maybe 3 or 4 times down the chain before you realise. But it's a problem for all of us, right? And we have a pretty low tolerance to it.
I was going to come from a slightly different angle here in terms of your question earlier. And voice. Is voice hot or not? And I come maybe from a bit of a different view than most people kind of here in the audience and the panel, etc. From an international connectivity perspective, when operators are out there negotiating roaming contracts all over the world, the most important thing that really matters is data. Voice and SMS are part of our agreements, but it's really all about the data. Data connectivity, data commercials, data, etc., etc. It's all about data. And when we look at the global connectivity, it's all moving to VoLTE and 5G, so it is all data. Now, I know that for the end users, etc., there's voice there, absolutely. But when you've kind of moved on from that step, it is data connectivity. That's what it comes down to. And that is what every operator wants and every operator needs. So and this is why it's a really interesting kind of discussion here, because messaging is absolutely key. But then when we kind of take it to the next step, it is all just kind of flow through as data.
Let me jump in here. Now, basically, the connectivity is data, no doubt. I mean, IP is data. Okay, so voice runs on IP. So, but as many of us experience when we have meetings here in La Fida and other events. We talk about new services, we talk about mobile ID, we talk about eSIMs, we talk about, my company itself, BTS, is involved in new technology on the voice side, innovations here and there, different aspects, SMS, flash calling, you call it. But as you're walking out of the meeting, someone will come in, but let's not forget about the voice business. 'Cause that's where the money is.
So I guess it brings me to the next question. And we only have 2 questions today. It's very rare in my panels. What is not hot? I think we've touched maybe a little bit. What is cooling down? Let's grade it. So, sometimes when I say what's hot or not, that's super hot, warming up, cooling down. What's cooling down or not hot? Mike?
So I think the one that I would call out is good old classic international voice. I know we've talked about voice, but year on year for most businesses declining 20% a year because enterprises and people are using other services to communicate, right? If you want to call somebody in, I don't know, France and you're in the UK, you'll just use Teams or some other UC client, and that's having a pretty material impact, I think, on those legacy revenues. But also when you look at some of the complexities around regulation and what the regulators are doing to sort of stamp out, again, predominantly nuisance calling, it's having a negative effect on that particular line of most people's businesses.
Eugene, do you agree?
Well, I think what's hot is how do you run a profitable, high-efficient voice business? That's hot because it's not that easy. And that's why a lot of people are getting out of the business because they don't have the resources or the focus or the tools to make it happen. So, and from that perspective, I think it is hot from many aspects because if you know how to run the business well, it's a very profitable business. It's a scale, it's commoditized, but an overall voice, not just wholesale voice, because as you mentioned, it could be a decline, 3.5%, 5%, depends where you are. But the overall voice, if you want to include OTTs, et cetera, people are talking, although we know that young people text more than they talk, but overall, people are talking. So overall voice is on the upper side, but specifically on the wholesale voice, it's not.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. What about,
I was just going to say, it comes back to basic humanity, right? People communicate verbally. So, as long as we're communicating verbally, you would imagine that there's always going to be a role for voice as part of it, unless we can, read each other's minds and stuff, which I don't think we're quite there on yet.
So what about CPaaS? It's been a buzzword for a while. Is that hot? Is that really hot? Pretend hot? Cooling down? Who wants to take that? Silence. Mike?
I think it's, 50 degrees if we had to rate it. I think for a long time it was a super popular growth area, and it was, a lot of the analysts were big fans of it. And then I think it's sort of, there's a realization now that actually it's morphing into adjacent markets, and some of it is staying in messaging, but that's now all being rolled into the CX market, which is the cloud CX market's a big growth market, but pretty much all of the operators in that space touch that sector specifically. So it's much more about customer communication experience than I would say CPaaS, because pretty much a lot of platforms now have got APIs, which was their point of differentiation originally. Now it's all about how do you make someone's experience better.
Okay.
I like the comment I think you made earlier about global localization. You made that point earlier. And if you're talking about CPaaS, I think that is a real issue because there's hype and there's reality. The reality is there are over 300 million businesses out there. Less than 10% use business messaging. And we have Carol, who was with MEF for so many years, a decade in the audience. And I remember Carol and I, for an omni-channel event a couple of years ago, we thought, actually, do you know what? We're MEF. We have all these members. Let's actually put communication together for people like you coming to an event like this. Let's get it organized so we can send updates out via SMS, via WhatsApp, via RCS, and via Apple. Do you remember that? And do you remember how complicated it was? So talk about a small business. Carol and I, we were looking into that. The hoops, the things that we would have had to have done to be able to enable that for MEF to send out just basic updates to all of you coming to an event such as this was horrendous, huge. So the reality is it's really, really not easy. And this is why the CPaaS community, the aggregator community, the Twilios, the Cinches, the GMSs, Gammas, everyone out there has a role to play because they make this much, much easier for companies that do not want to get bogged down in the detail. And the sad reality is actually there's a breakdown taking place, and I'm seeing very much the middle of the CPaaS world being ripped out because of increasing regulation as well, and you're having to be compliant if you're, as well, for example, Matthew as well, you've got operations all around the world. You've got to be compliant around the world. You cannot miss anything, you cannot fall foul of regulation. And technology can only get you so far. You need people, and that requires resources and money. So it's actually only big companies with lots and lots of people and lots of money can act at a truly global level in the CPaaS sector. But I think there's a huge role to play on, for example, a national, domestic level with smaller, agile players. And the role of regulation comes into play. For example, last week on a MEF working group, we had Ofcom, the regulator from the UK, coming along. And they have a paper out, and they are suggesting to the mobile operators in the UK a capped price of 1.96 pence, which is about 2.1 euro cents, so roughly the same US cents. Cap price, this is what the operators are paid. So it's very simple. So if Eugene comes along as BTS in the UK market, he wants to buy connectivity from any operator, it's 1.96p, and then he adds his margin on top. So there's real clarity in the market, and that is what has been lacking for such a long time. So we really don't want too much regulation because we've seen regulation can be suboptimal, for example, in Malaysia with what's happened in the business messaging market and their regulation. But in some places done right, it could be good. But ideally, it should be us as an industry self-regulating, and that would ultimately help CPaaS.
Okay.
I mean, just to poke on that a little bit, though, I mean, you've just got to look at the things like the origin-based rating, and I'm not sure the industry did a great job of fixing that problem. I mean, it's just been profiteering broadly, from what I can tell. So I think the regulator needs to play a part, but it needs to be, for me, really in conjunction with the rest of the industry. You can't just leave the Wild West to the cowboys.
Absolutely, this is where organisations such as MEF come in. Yeah. So getting regulators involved, as was the case last week with Ofcom.
Okay, so we're closing down now with a little game I like to play on stage with my panelists often. It's called the one-word challenge. So I'm going to ask them questions, and they can only answer with one word. And I can tell you that with the people we have on stage, that's going to be a proper challenge. So, are you ready, guys?
Give it a go.
Okay. What is the biggest opportunity in wholesale at the moment, Eugene?
One word. Biggest opportunity? I say voice.
Okay. James?
I do actually agree with Eugene quite a lot. I would say voice as well.
Okay, Mike?
Localization.
Nitin?
ASIMs.
And
Private networks. I know it's 2 words.
private networks. No, it's allowed, 2 to 3 words. What's the biggest challenge in the wholesale business?
Standardization.
Complexity in terms of roaming.
Regulation.
Regulation.
Efficiencies.
Who's the biggest winner at the moment in the industry, Eugene?
BTS.
James?
I would say it's the aggregators at the moment.
Okay. Mike?
Big tech.
Big tech?
Yeah, brands. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the same big tech.
And the last question, who's the biggest loser? No company name, by the way, just types of players, please. Behave.
I'm going to say technophobes.
It's yeah. I mean, he's put it into a single word, but operators who do not innovate will be left behind.
Mike?
So for me, it's the incumbents.
Operators.
Shareholders of telecom companies.
Ooh, okay. Now, as I like to finish my panels like I did last time, what is your final word? What is the one thing you want them to remember when they go out and get ready for the MEFIs tonight, and you want them to ponder on something? What would it be?
Trust.
Connectivity, because quite simply put, there are so many people around the world yet to be connected, and too little time and discussion is actually spent talking about exactly that topic.
I think for me it's collaborations and partnerships. So we can't reach the world on our own, right? We need to do that in partnership with the right sort of people and organisations.
I think I'll come from a roaming and international connectivity perspective that roaming is evolving and the complexity is increasing. So if you're not in a position to innovate, you'll be left behind. So that's the message.
Okay.
Well, that's completely stolen my thunder, that one has. But I would like to combine. I'm going to combine these last two: the collaboration and the international roaming ecosystem, and the role it plays in the growth of the business.
All right. Thank you so much. That concludes our panel. Thank you so much. I think it was super interesting.
Thank you.
Yes.
The first time to buy me some time. So
Yes.
Oh, no problem.
Ooh.
Any comments? You know, it doesn't have to be a question. It could be.
Question at the back.
oh, there is a question about, and then I've got some housekeeping.
All right. Okay.
Hi, Charles from Paradis. So it's quite a late questions. What about API from Open Gateway? What is your point of view?
Who wants to take that? API from Open Gateway.
Take it.
Thanks.
Network APIs are not new. I was working with Jersey Telecom back in 2013, and we were actually the first ones to talk about network APIs and work with the network operators in the UK. That was 12 years ago. The reality is network APIs are frighteningly simple, exactly like A2P SMS is with a mobile operator. First of all, in order for network APIs to be a success, every single operator has to get on board. And, as was drilled home on an earlier panel today, for them to have any chance of success, the price for network APIs has got to be very, very reasonable. And I think it was Eddie de Curtis from Shush said, they cannot be more than SMS. Simple. Simplicity is absolutely key, and all the MNOs have got to be involved.
And don't believe in those big, massive numbers that's out there.
No.
I mean, I would just add that APIs aren't a new thing, right? And many smaller networks have had APIs for years. I think getting everyone to agree who they are, what they do, and what benefit they bring is really one of the big challenges that we need to figure out here.
Cool. All right. Well, I think that truly concludes.
It's not because they've been there for long that you should dismiss them, because RCS have been there forever and it's coming now. So same path somehow.
Exactly, but it's about how you frame it. So, like, Gene has been in business development for a long time. I have people on this stage have, some of you in the audience have. It's about how you frame it and position it. You can have the best product in the world, but if you do not position it correctly, you're going to fail. For example, with RCS, we as a total industry have failed at positioning correctly. We positioned it to everyone. It's a super rich channel. It's two-way. It's this, it's that. It's actually, if you're an enterprise again and a small enterprise, it's super complicated for you to do it yourself with all these wonderful carousels and rich cards. You need an intermediary to help, or a larger player like a big aggregator to truly help enable all of that for you, which costs as well. The reality is, if we would have taken baby steps and simply been able to get mobile network operators to deliver what they do currently via SMS, but instead via RBM, so people essentially by stealth, but in a good way, start receiving messages which were SMS. Then they realize, oh, it's got a little bubble with it. Oh, what's this? It's something different. Oh, look, there's a logo. I trust this more. So there's a natural evolution would take place. So it's all about market position and branding. And in many ways, we as an industry have failed with many things over the years.
Okay. I don't like to end a panel on failure, but there we are. So thank you very much. Thank you for the panelists, and thank you for sticking with us until the end, everyone. And
Thank you.
Thank you.
okay, don't leave. Susan has some housekeeping before we leave, but thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For a picture.